This is VOA News. I'm Marissa Melton. The sounds of explosions and heavy gunfire echoed through Sudan's capital, Khartoum, on Friday, despite a ceasefire. Reuters correspondent David Doyle has more.
Amid Sudan's crisis, a reason for joy. A newborn baby delivered in a car during a conflict that has closed many hospitals. But back in the capital, the violence continues. Tanks, artillery and strikes from the air shook Sudan's capital Khartoum on Friday, witnesses said. That's despite the army and a rival paramilitary force agreeing to extend a truce by 72 hours. The United States has called persistent ceasefire violations worrying, amid violence that has killed hundreds of people.
Reuters David Doyle reporting Ukraine's defense minister Oleksiy Reznikov said Friday that a counterattack against Russia is fast approaching. At an online news briefing, Reznikov noted that Ukraine forces are to a high percentage ready to launch their campaign, and modern weaponry would serve as what he called an iron fist. Using hundreds of tanks and armored vehicles sent by the West, Kyiv is preparing its counteroffensive, aiming at driving Russian forces out of Ukrainian territories. The Taliban said Friday that their decision in Afghanistan to bar local women from working for the United Nations was an internal social matter of Afghanistan that all countries should respect. The statement came a day after the 15-member UN Security Council unanimously passed a resolution demanding the Taliban end its restrictions on women's access to education and work. The resolution was co-sponsored by more than 90 countries. More at our website, voanews.com. This is VOA News. Pope Francis in Hungary has urged Europe to unite to end the Ukraine war next door. AP correspondent Charles de Ledesma.
Pope Francis has blasted what he calls the adolescent belligerence that brought war back to Europe, and says that the continent must recover its founding spirit of peaceful unity to confront Russia's war in Ukraine. Francis outlined his vision for the future of Europe as he began a 3-day visit to Hungary. In a carefully calibrated speech, he demanded the EU approve safe and legal ways for migrants to enter. The pontiff recalled the lofty ideals behind the bloc's founding and lamented that rising nationalism had replaced them. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
U.S. regulators on Friday put large banks on notice that tougher oversight is coming after the Federal Reserve and Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation issued detailed reports on what went wrong and where their supervisors came up short in the run-up to the two biggest bank failures since the Great Financial Crisis. Reuters' Chris Dignam has more.
The U.S. Federal Reserve on Friday released a scathing review of its own oversight of the now-shuttered Silicon Valley Bank, saying in a 114-page report that it failed to identify problems and push for fixes at the California lender before it collapsed in the biggest bank failure since the 2008 financial crisis. The Fed's vice chair for supervision said SVB's collapse, quote, demonstrates that there are weaknesses in regulation and supervision that must be addressed. While it was the regional bank's own mismanagement at the root of its downfall, the Fed said supervisors of the bank did not fully appreciate the problems and failed to appropriately respond when warning signs were identified.
That's Reuters' Chris Dignam reporting. Brazil's president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, officially recognized 6 indigenous reservations on Friday, reversing the policies of his far-right predecessor, Jair Bolsonaro, who opened the land to farming and other industries. Lula signed the official decrees in the capital, Brasilia, on the final day of a 5-day gathering of indigenous people from around the country. Scholars and historical institutions around the world are coming to the defense of a Polish researcher. The scholar, Barbara Engelking, is under fire from her country's authorities after claiming that Poles could have done more to help Jews during the Holocaust. Engelking said during a televised interview last week that Polish Jews felt disappointed in Poles during World War II. Poland's conservative government and conservative media accuse her of distorting the historical record and not giving due credit to the Poles who risked their lives to help Jewish people. Marissa Melton, VOA News.
Thank you for watching. Can you do me a favor? Please leave a comment in the comment section below. That would really help. Thank you, and see you again soon.